Welcome to Awakening the Warrior. I'm your host, KB Hannibal. And today I'm going to do a little personal reflection on land mentality. I'm going to start off with a spoken word poem that I wrote called Say It With Your Chest. They ask, do you need anything? And I say, no, because saying yes has been a setup too many times. When I finally open that door, when I finally admit that maybe, just maybe, I can't carry it all, they're gone, suddenly busy, quiet. And that's when I learned some people don't offer help out of love. They offer it out of habit, out of performance, because they know I won't say yes. And I realize the offer was never about me. It was about their image. It makes them feel generous without ever lifting a hand. But when I finally do ask and no one shows up, that silence, it thunders louder than the heaviest no I've ever whispered. It broke something, not loudly. It cracked quietly, like pride, like trust. And even when the ones who call, most of the time, it ain't to check on me, it's to collect a favor, a ride, a miracle on a deadline. Suddenly, my peace is negotiable, my rest disposable, my no unacceptable. They expect me to drop everything, my plans, my work, my pulse, to fix their fires while mine burn unattended, a sacrifice I can't afford. And when I can't, when I'm empty, now I'm the problem, cold, selfish. You never helped me, they say, forgetting the times I bled for them in silence. It starts to feel like none of this is real, like every connection is a transaction, not love, not presence, just service is rendered. But here's what they forget. I see everything, even when I say nothing. I don't need you to say a word. Your vibes told me the whole story before your mouth ever opened. You could come to me with your guilt saying I don't care, but that's not truth. That's projection, gaslighting. They say, why don't you call? But my phone doesn't ring unless I'm useful. They say you never come around, but no one's ever knocking on my door. I'm always expected to show up, run on empty just to meet their needs. But tell me, why should I keep going an extra mile when no one's willing to meet me halfway? I'm not looking for givers, I'm just tired of them expecting one-sided loyalty. I used to shrink myself to keep others whole. I swallowed my pain while they hurled theirs at me, because deep down, I didn't want to hurt them. Not out of fear, but because I know too well the way careless words can bruise a soul. Even when I was breaking, I still tried to protect the ones who were responsible for me being broken. And I knew what their words felt like when they cut me. And I couldn't bring myself to make someone else bleed like that. I stopped asking, stopped hoping, started building walls that look like boundaries, that look like peace, and doors that only open from the inside. Because I'm tired of being currency, tired of being strength until I shatter, tired of being called selfish for saving myself first. I'm not cold, and I'm not selfish. I'm just done, bleeding for people who bring knives to the table. This is not bitterness. This is clarity. This is what it looks like when a warrior stops apologizing for choosing herself. When people call, it's often in their darkest hours. They're sick, overwhelmed, falling apart, and they expect me to be their lifeline. But what they don't see is that sometimes I'm drowning too. I'm in the corner fighting for air, buried under my own storms, clinging to any bit of healing I can find. And when I don't answer because I can't, it's not a rejection, it's survival. But they don't see that. Instead, it's you weren't there for me, even when I can barely be there for myself. And when I do answer, the conversation rarely touches my wounds. I open up just a little bit, and suddenly, I'm interrupted by their urgency, their cries, Their crisis, they're heavier than mine heartbreak. My pain gets pushed off to the edge like it's less valid. Like I don't bleed too. So when I finally go quiet, to breathe and ground myself, to piece together my own shattered pieces, here comes the ultimatums. The passive-aggressive text, the guilt, but I've reached a place where there's no need to argue, no need to explain why I didn't call back or why I let the message sit unread. If silence make you walk away, walk. Because I've been surrounded by people and still felt alone. I've clapped for others while internally I was crumbling. I've been the strong friend for too long now. And now I choose me. Your departure won't shatter me because I've rebuilt too many times with nothing but my bare hands, anxiety, and a backbone no one ever thought to hold. I've been called friend by those who only knew how to take. Those days when the mask slipped and I couldn't hold the avalanche, they stood before me, eyes locked on a storm that was in my eyes, yet still handed me their thunder. As if I weren't already drowning in my own flood, but I swallowed my pain anyway. Tightened the smile off a shelter with shaking hands and told myself, it's okay. They need me. But tell me, where were they on those midnight drives I took for survival? Months of backseat sobbing and front seat screaming, chasing a reason not to disappear, a reason to give it one more day. I pull over, empty my soul, wallop into the steering wheel, then wipe my tears, grab a cup of Dunkin' like it was armor, and ride home with the music loud enough to cover my break-in. I made those car rides look like a concert, but they were really my confessions. Where were my friends when I stood over the sink, soap in my hands, and a song belted out a melody that summoned the ghosts of memory, haunting a moment still in the breath from my chest, unraveling every thread of strength I had stitched together just to make it through the day? It cracked something in my mind, unleashing an unstable ache, a quiet insanity that spilled down my face in a waterfall of chaos. Where were they when I scrolled through my contacts, searching for someone, anyone? Because the pressure of hopelessness was building up like a tsunami, begging me to end it all so I never felt this torture again. And I just wanted to save myself. But I needed someone to talk me off the edge, to tell me it was going to be all right, as I had did for others so many other times. And I stared at the screen like it had salvation. But all I saw were names that felt more like weights than lifelines. So I closed my phone because I couldn't risk another empty "you'll be fine," another distraction disguised as comfort, another conversation where my pain gets reshaped to fit their convenience, or another request disguised as love. So I sat with the ache, letting it echo through the silence. Because the truth is, I didn't need a fixer. I needed a witness, someone to hold space, someone who didn't flinch when I said I'm not okay. But the only person who heard me was me. And so I rolled that moment out like all the others, alone but alive, scared but still breathing, stitching another layer of armor over the parts that still believe someone might actually show up. I didn't want to be a service. I wanted to be seen. I needed to be heard. But I see now, sometimes silence isn't about being strong. It's about being safer alone. Because being surrounded and still feeling abandoned is a pain too deep to bear, but too familiar. I hope you enjoyed my personal reflection, and I'm going to give a little insight into what it's like living in the lamb mentality. When you live in a lamb mentality, you often become the silent catcher of everyone else's burden. The world doesn't always see your strength. They see your availability. You begin to notice a pattern in every relationship, every connection, being viewed as the easy one, the soft landing, the emotional mule. No matter who you're around, the interactions feel familiar, exhausting, one-sided, and quietly depleting. You leave those moments feeling unworthy, uncared for, unloved, unappreciated, disrespected. Not because you're physically weak or afraid to fight back, but because your heart holds so much empathy that you rather carry someone else's pain than let them feel it alone. You sacrifice your joy just to make others comfortable. But when empathy becomes currency, you risk overdrafting your spirit. You spiral emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. The lamb mentality can lead to anxiety and depression and emotional isolation. You may start to shut everyone out, not out of spite, but out of survival. You're drowning in loneliness, yet surrounded by people. It alters how you see the world, makes you wonder if being here is even worth it. And that's why it's critical to recognize when your mind is tired, when your emotions are stretched thin. And while none of this makes you less than, it means the journey back starts with truth, with setting boundaries, with learning to stand up for yourself without apology, no matter who's in the way. You must protect your own empathy from those who misuse it. People will always test your limits, but they only succeed when you allow them to. Your mental health is your responsibility. It's not on others to stop taking, it's on you to stop doing. And sometimes those who drain you are fighting their own battles, repeating patterns from trauma that they've lived. Still, your healing cannot wait on their enlightenment. Acknowledging your pain, recognizing your patterns, and choosing to change is a real act of courage. But most of us don't start there. We arrive in exhaustion. We recognize the manipulation, but by that time, it's too late. And that's what makes this podcast personal for me. It took me years to step out of that lamb mentality, and I'm still climbing. I knew the source of my pain. I even knew my solutions. But when it came to family and close friends, the lines blurred. The cycles repeated. Thankfully, I have an aunt who's a doctor of psychology, and she's walked with me from the start. Sometimes it was hard to call it, even as a mental health professional. She was family, and family comes with its own bias and weight. But her support was real. Her encouragement helped me seek therapy outside the family circle. And that's when my healing began. There's also a stigma within the Black community around seeking help. But there's also truth in why the stigmas form. Much of our mental conditioning was born from survival. Traditions passed down through slavery, Jim Crow, and generational pain. What happens in this house stays in this house. That wasn't just a rule. It was a shield. One that eventually became a cage. Our communities were often designed to fail. Housing projects built to compress us into poverty, policies that tore fathers from homes, and substance epidemics that devastated the family structure. These traumas were not born from us, but they live within us. People talk about fatherlessness, but that's not the whole story. We had men, uncles, grandfathers, fathers, but the system systematically removed them. Others were forced to abandon their families to avoid disqualifying basic housing benefits. It wasn't an accident, it was a structure, it was a strategy. And now we're told we come from chaos as if history didn't create the conditions. Add to that the media's obsession with Black on Black crime, ignoring the fact that people of every race commit violence within their communities, but only ours is broadcast, only ours is weaponized. Our mothers and aunts did what they could do with what they had. They came from love that wasn't always spoken, but shown. They were strong because they had to be, and they raised children who sometimes felt confused by the rules, hardened by the discipline, but also protected by tradition. I was one of those children. And like many of you, I started off strict with my own first child until I realized I was repeating a pattern that no longer served me. I began to rebel, not because I hated where I came from, but because I longed to feel free. But running doesn't erase pain, it just moves the scenery. Every new house had new rules, and eventually I had to face my truth. My mothers, my aunts, they pushed through poverty and climbed towards the American dream, not rich but secure. I didn't understand their fight because I didn't live their struggle. I never went without until I chose to leave. It wasn't until I landed back on the edge of poverty, burdened by unhealed trauma, that I began to understand what they were trying to build. I carried the wounds I thought would vanish with time, but unspoken pain never leaves. It just waits. This space isn't just for black sheep, it's for forgotten hearts. The quiet warriors, the ones who grew up in land mentality, thinking love was earned through sacrifice. And while my story reflects my black experience, I know trauma comes in every color and poverty speaks every language. What connects us is not just pain, but the choice to heal. So today, I speak as a people pleaser learning to say no, as a soul in progress learning to walk in truth. And if you've been there, if you're there right now, this space is also for you. Share your story, release your shame, reclaim your roar. Until next time, thank you for joining me, KB Hannibal, on Awakening the Warrior.